doesn't.
So my name is Josh Singh. I work at Riot Games. I've been working at Riot Games for about 2 years now, and I am a senior character artist. I was on the skins team, the champion team. I'm currently on the relaunch team. Does anyone play League of Legends in here? Okay, awesome. So you guys are familiar with, I've been redoing some of the old character. Well, not me, but a team of guys that I'm included in have been redoing a lot of the old character art. But when I got to Riot Games, they were still doing all the excuse me. They were making all the characters like in the old school sort of box modeling, pulling points type method. That's like old school style. Prior to Riot, I was at Blizzard, and at Blizzard I learned a lot of cool stuff. And one of the things that we were doing over there was we were using ZBrush to make proxy meshes that we can get to the animators quickly that aid in production. And it was also super fast to get rudimentary texture maps off of these high poly models, even if we weren't going to use normal mapping, right? So we don't use normal mapping on League of Legends. It's purely diffuse. It's just color maps. But when I got to Riot, I said, well, hey, why don't we use ZBrush? Because we can make the model just as fast, if not faster. Iteration will be much faster on the actual in-game asset. And then we can bake out an ambient occlusion map, and our texture map's already pretty much, halfway done. We just got to put some color, and there's a little more to it, but we can get something that's fairly representative of what the character will look like in game really, really fast. And because of the skins pipeline and the cadence, the production cadence that we have on League of Legends, we needed stuff fast at high quality, and so ZBrush really, really helped us to streamline the pipeline so that we could iterate faster. We could make mistakes faster, so to speak. We could see what worked and what didn't work before we had already invested so much time in something. Right? My workflow in ZBrush, there's a lot of stuff in ZBrush that it opens up tons of possibilities. What I use ZBrush for mostly is just making a character model, right? And then taking it to retopologizing it, getting a UV map, baking a texture, and then sending it off to the rigging department. All right, so this will give you a brief overview of my workflow. So over the years, I've sort of collected all these, let me start from the beginning, all these sort of base meshes. I think I got this from one of my buddies. I think he was one of the instructors here, Mayan Escalante. I don't know if you guys know him. One of my buddies that I worked with in the past, and he gave me one of these base meshes, and I use it all the time. And so this is, if you guys are familiar with League of Legends, there's a character named Heimerdinger. And he is in sore need of a visual upgrade. And I recorded my sculpting process as I went through, he's a creature called a yordle. It's kind of like a furry little creature. But he's this little professor guy. And so I started out using that human base model. And I do a lot of Dynamesh, just shaping the model, pushing it around, then Dynamesh. Then make adjustments, big edits, then Dynamesh. In this particular case, I use a lot of the primitives. I'll go ahead and append a lot of the primitives into my scene. I use the insert brushes as well. So that's a sign, in my opinion, that's a sign of a good program if you can do the same thing like 5 different ways, right? And that's totally ZBrush. Like even when Paul was up here, I was like, oh, I know another way to do that. And I'm sure as you guys see me going through this, you're going to be like, I know a way he could do that. That's probably 2 steps less, but don't judge me too harshly. I just know what I know. So, I mean, here, this is my method of just pulling out fur. Just mask it, snake hook, boom, boom, boom. I like to have these big forms. Oh, and this is when I hit turntable by accident. So, watch the turntable real quick. And boom, back into it. So, it's really just a lot of snake hook, standard brush, Damien standard brush, clay buildup, clay, move tool, trim dynamic, high polish, Dynamesh, extract, inflate. I use polygroups a lot to help me with, I kind of use it almost as like a save selection type thing. Like if there's a masking selection that I don't want to have to redo over and over again, I'll just make it a polygroup. So, we go ahead and, I made his little mustache, I'm making his fur, and here's where I make his hair. If you're familiar with the character of Heimerdinger, a lot of people don't know that that's supposed to be his hair. Currently, it looks like his brain, because if you look at League of Legends, and if you look at, you'll see what I mean if you don't know what I'm talking about. But actually in China, I think they call him like Brainhead or something like that. Like his name translates to Brainhead is his nickname, because they're like, is that his brain showing? It's actually supposed to be his blonde curly hair, because he was supposed to be like Einstein or something. And so one of the goals of this sculpt was to go ahead and make sure that his hair looked like hair. And so, but one thing I've noticed is it's all about the transitions, right? And when you're sculpting, if you have nice overlaps and nice tuck-ins and stuff like that, and your transitions are really clean, it gives that really clean feeling. Like a lot of people are they're like, oh, Josh, I like your sculpts. They're like so clean. I'm like, they're not really that clean. They're actually pretty lumpy. But when I really focus in on the transitions and I focus in on the edge work, it gives that feeling of clean shapes and nice transitions, right? And you don't get that, like you see a lot of people when they're first using ZBrush, the transitions are very lumpy and sort of smooth, and like it's not sharp, and there's no, and there are ways to get around that, but if you're aware of it, that's the first step, right? So went ahead and another trick is that I learned specifically in games. I don't know if this holds true for film, but in video games, I use symmetry a ton on pieces, but only when both sides aren't going to be seen at the same time. So, like on the sideburns, like on the sides, like if you're not going to see both sides at the same time, I'll symmetry the hell out of it. But down the middle, I won't. I'll go ahead and try to make that unique whenever I can. Sometimes we have technological, limitations or whatever. But I love using symmetry. Like, I guess the rule could go the further the extremity, the safer it is to use symmetry. If the closer you get to the symmetrical line in the middle, the more obvious it's going to look, right? So, if you take a look at his hair, it's very symmetrical, but on the sides, but down the front, it becomes more asymmetrical. I'm really a big believer in shortcuts. I don't like to do a lot of work, so I like to ease it wherever I can and make it look good. Some people say that's lazy, some people say it's cheating, but whatever. It's all about getting the work done. So here's what I'm talking about. I'm tucking in edges, I'm tucking in transitions. Go ahead and mask it, pull it through. Go ahead and really just tuck the edges. Go with the trim dynamic and start creasing those edges, start pulling the overlaps, and it makes things look nice. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and fast forward here a little bit. Okay, so here's basically how I make pretty much every costume and every armor. I'm going to go over it more in detail when I open the ZBrush file, but basically just make a mask, extract it. Sometimes I won't even bother messing with the slider that tells you how thick to make it. I'll just go ahead and just say that's fine, whatever, and then I'll use inflate because I like the inflate because it gives you sort of that real time, you can scrub it and it'll go boop, 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 and I can really just eyeball what I want to do. So I'll go ahead and inflate it, dynamesh it, unless I have other plans, because I like how extract gives you those two polygroups on the edges for nice creases. So if that's something that I'll keep in mind, but for this particular case, go ahead, dynamesh that, and another thing, make sure all your brushes are always set to back face masking. That's one of those things that I didn't learn until maybe last year sometime. I'm just why am I always, especially when you get thin, people are just oh, it's crumbling. It's turn on auto back face masking, and it's voila, it looks awesome. I'll show you guys that too if you haven't seen it. So anyway, working on the coat. I do for the game League of Legends, it's, for those who don't know, it's sort of at an isometric view, and the characters can get very, very small because it's sort of a 5v5 arena type game. So there's a certain shape language and there's a certain design or detail management sort of philosophy we have to keep in mind before things get too busy, right? And so we've been successful on some characters, other characters need some help, but overall, basically small characters, this guy's a small character, you get basically 1.5 things to really say, boom, this identifies him. And because it's top down, we like to put the detail on the shoulders, on the back, on the head, near the weapon, source of power type stuff so that you know what's going on. These are sort of all the factors we think about when designing a character for League. We want to go ahead and make sure that the thing that makes that character important is one of the most easily identifiable things, right? So, that being said, so Heimerdinger, he's got a big curly head, and he's got this trench coat. The hands, so this is why I'm making the boots. I actually go ahead and I think I duplicate the mesh. I have them there as placeholder, but then I duplicate the mesh, and then I delete all of it except for the boots. And so I have the boots laying on top of another set of boots. And I'll use that technique because I like to pull. Sometimes I'll go underneath the subtool, and I'll pull stuff out. And it actually is really, really good because then you get a nice clean transition, right? Like, I'll pull shapes from underneath. It's a nice trick. I really like doing it. And also when I need to make recesses, I'll go to the outside boot or the outside subtool, and I'll dig in, and it'll look like it's a nice clean hole that like has a nice little, recess into it. So I made those hands because the stock hands weren't cartoony enough. And basically what I did was I just made one finger, just appended a cube, bent it, made a little knuckles, set it on there, made a little sphere, stuck it on there, duplicated, boom, boom, boom. I merged them all together, Dynamesh, clean it up. Super simple, super awesome. Love Dynamesh. Like, seriously, Dynamesh changed, like, everything. Like, it was one of those things when I got the hang of it, it was just like, I kind of almost don't even use subdivision levels anymore. I still use subdivision levels sometimes when it's time to, like, polish things and, like, really go to, like, add lots of polygons. If I'm doing some surface work. But overall, just using the resolutions in Dynamesh gets me where I want to be. It also helps me keep track of not letting things get too big. Like if things get too big, I'll start cutting them up and having higher polygon subtools rather than one giant beast of polygon mesh, right? Here's where I go ahead and I'll show you guys how I did this too. I just kind of make these pouches, just make I kind of think of the center of ZBrush almost as like a pottery wheel or something like that. Like I like to keep things in the center so that symmetry always works. And I'll make like anything that I think has symmetry, like the wrench or those pockets or whatever. I'll just make them down the center, and I'll use all the symmetry pieces, whatever. And then I'll just duplicate it, and then I will just bring it up and pose it. And I'll leave that other one there for like maybe I want to make another bag, but make it like skinny and fat or whatever. And I'll use it. I'll make variants of the bag or the grenade or whatever it is, and just leave that sucker there, and then just keep going. Here is a character from League of Legends called Singed. All right, I sculpted this yesterday. This is the first part. I have another part that I'll go over first. So this is a beast of a file because I saved all my undo states. I know Paul was showing you guys how you can scrub through the undos and like see stuff getting made. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to talk you through what I actually did, okay? And hopefully I can answer your questions. Is it cool to do Q&A like in the middle of stuff? All right, cool. All right, so let's start with... So one of the things I really, because so you can see here, I get a ton of subtools. That's just the way I work. I guess I could clean it up. But one of the things I really do like about ZBrush is the ability to just alt-click on stuff, and it'll take you right to the subtool. So I just alt-clicked that body, and it took me right there. So this is where I started. Okay, this is the underbody. And you can see it's all like jacked up right here because I made the boot on top of it, and I started tucking it in. But I just needed it for proportional purposes. So let me start with, let's go all the way back in time to the beginning. Started from a sphere, append a cube, it starts out kind of gestural, right? Like just kind of putting head placement, append a cylinder into there, make my little superhero underwear, and some thighs, some cylinders. Throw in some, now this is all using insert brushes, which is why I have the history. And so, yeah, Singed has really big feet. Now I start building up forms. Let's see here. Starting to build up my forms. I think one of the things I really, really find useful before I start a sculpt, I love getting the posture down. If you can get the posture, I mean, it still has to be in a T-pose, but if you can get, if there's any technical artists in here, you're probably going, no. But like if you can get a little bit of attitude, you know, and then if you're cool with like making everything straight for the technical artist later on, I mean, that helps them. But when I'm sculpting, like, and I just want to make it feel awesome, I like to really get some weight in there, you know, and really start, like, even though it's still a T pose, I want to get some movement. I want to get some rhythms and some arcs and some lines and some, you know, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you see, I'm like putting his hips forward, and I'm putting the head down and the arms back and all that kind of stuff. Because it helps me feel the character. It helps me understand what kind of character that's going to be. And, you know, he's like skinny, lean guy. You know, I'm starting to understand where things lie, where, you know, pieces are in relation to another, like where the hips should lie, and therefore where, you know, the groin should lie, which then indicates where, you know, how the thighs are going to connect, where the rib cage lies. Helps me figure out where the abs are going to go. So just getting all that stuff in there. Another thing too is, especially when I'm roughing out like this, I love the polish feature on Dynamesh. So sometimes I'll just like keep it kind of low res, you know, so I can have so all my brush strokes are a little more dramatic. But then, like, as things start getting lumpy, I'll just go ahead and throw down a Dynamesh with polish on it, and it like instantly like creases everything and makes it look like all kind of pro. Oh yeah, so here's the thing. Like, I actually I made the hands separately, or I made those fingers in the way I showed you in the Heimerdinger video. I just made one finger, and then I placed them, and then I added them, and so they just kind of pop into existence. But that's how I made them. It was just out of cubes, and then I just copied them. And then you start, you know, and then just looking at it, it's like, oh, you know, start making him leaner and really start laying out the musculature, kneecaps. And so I couldn't, okay, so let's stop right here, because then I wanted to move to the boots, right? You can see I'm digging into there. And the reason I'm digging into there, let's go to this boot, is because I went ahead and if we take a look at these boots, I'm going to hide this one. Now we'll tell the story of the boots. Undo's cool. So the boots started out as the same guy. But what I did was I went ahead and I hid him, and then I delete hidden. It's in the geometry tab. Delete hidden, and then Dynamesh to cap the hole. Done, Dynamesh. And then I'm shaping it. I just started sculpting out the boot. And then I actually, you're going to see straps pop into existence because those were made with a mask. I might have the mask in here. A mask and an extraction. Let's see, we're going. And first the heel, that got extracted into a piece, that history doesn't exist anymore because it got come in. Then there's all the pieces, right? And then went ahead and just extracted some stuff. And then you can see I turned the feet out. Turning the feet out just adds a lot of weight. It adds a lot of I just like doing it. The technical artists hate it, but I just have to usually turn them back in for rigging purposes because they like everything to be straight. But I like to turn them out because it adds weight and it adds attitude to the model. So there's the boots, and you can tell and that's why like it got all like sort of scraped in there. So moving onward, let me show you let's move on to the face. So started out with my body that I had. Same thing, mask it out, made a poly group out of it, and then deleted hidden, did a Dynamesh, which caps off the bottom, makes it its own thing. I'm sure there's probably another way to do it, but that's just how I do it. And then just start going at it. Paul showed you a few of these things in the quick demo that he did before me, but I'm really just starting to figure out where the cheekbones lie. He's a skinny guy, right? So, you know, once I figure out where all the bones lie, it becomes a lot easier. And then this is how I made nose. I just masked it, pulled it out, Okay, did a Dynamesh with polish on it. Now I'm using the Damien Standard tool, or the Dam Standard brush. And then I'm just kind of moving around the nose and giving that hook nose, a very stylized vibe. You know, I started doing that, I'm like, that looks dumb. Noses are tricky, man. Got to make sure you have all the planes right on a nose. Otherwise, it looks wonky. And then really just starting to dig in there. Just keep you working on that nostril. Trim dynamic brush. Make sure the planes are good. Start laying the planes down for the eye. It's a little bit of musculature. Okay, now here's where I go ahead and I mask it off. Well, I made a mask, inverted the mask, and I start working on the under eyelid. I really wanted that sort of like saggy eye, like Emperor Palpatine sort of vibe, you know, where it's just like a little cup holding a ball. Like that's how I think of eyes and eyelids. I just think they're these little cups that hold your eyeball, specifically the under eyelid, right? So I went ahead and pull that out, and then I pull it down past the area. See, like I'm pulling it past, and I'm tucking it in. And this is cool because when you tucked it in, then Dynameshed, and it gave me like a cool little transition right there, and like without like for free. And then I went ahead and just Dam Standarded it, and then insert brush sphere. It's like just like Paul showed you. Place those suckers, and then I start moving. Once you have eyes there, that in a position that you like, then it becomes much easier to start moving things in relation to the eyes rather than vice versa. So, you know, getting a little happy with the wrinkles. Like I was talking about detail management. Yeah, that's me just getting too happy with it. And then here I'm adding some asymmetry. So I went ahead and I just mask off an area, and then make sure the eyeballs are masked off as well. And then really just open up that eyeball like he's like, like, Okay, so, and then, you know, you guys know this trick. Just mask it, pull it out, Dynamesh it, make an ear. Booyah. And then I think there's some little spots and stuff. Yeah, got liver spots. And then I started, so Singed has his mouth is covered up by bandages. So I went ahead and masked off an area. And the masked off area became this piece. Okay, so there's his bandage area. And you can guess, it's the same technique that I've used before, where it's an extraction. It's pretty fat, like I told you. Like I don't really care. I guess I could have made it more narrower because I had to do some adjustments, but I could have made it thinner. But we just went ahead and Dynameshed it to like 64, so it was really, really light. And then just started adjusting it and just tucking it in. So then I can make it protrude out, right? I recessed it a little, like pushed it in, so then when I pulled it out, I had some room to grow. And it felt like it was tight to his face. So symmetry is on right now, and I wanted this to be asymmetrical, but I used that, I told you that idea that I have where it's like I use symmetry where you will not see it. So I go ahead and make it symmetrical, and then I'm like, oh dude, this looks dumb. I need some symmetry, or some asymmetry. So I'm like, okay, turn off, hit X, turn off the asymmetry, and then start adding a little bit of uniqueness to each side. These little bandage tears and rips. And then, I Dynameshed it without polish, and I got these little bumps. It's okay. And I just went with a trim dynamic and high polish and just smoothed it out. Shirt. That same idea, where I just go ahead and I make an extraction off the chest. Extraction, boom, Dynamesh, snake hook brush for some tears, asymmetrical tears down the front. symmetry on the back, because he's got actually this big gas, this like poison thing. So I really didn't care about the back. It's going to be covered up anyway. This piece, same deal, man. Like I find that ZBrush, it's all about generating geometry. Once you have a piece of geometry in there, you can do anything with it. Like that's all you need. I feel like Magneto. Like, you know how like Magneto, like he's in the prison and he just needs like one piece of metal. Like, oh, he's like, oh, dude, there's iron in your blood. I'm gonna make 3 little balls and get out of prison. Like, remember that scene? Like, I feel like that's ZBrush. Like, if ZBrush was like, you know what I mean? It's just like, just give me one piece of geometry and I can like make anything. Like, so once you get that geometry in there, you literally, with Dynamesh, you can just, it's like done. You just can like reshape it into anything. You know, scarf. Let's move down here. Extraction right there, that's a little piece. I'm going to get into this a little bit more in a second, but this is a little, I don't do too much hard edge stuff, like really hardcore, like futuristic, you know, Sid Mead type futuristic cars. I don't really do that. Because it's a fantasy game, there's a lot of fantasy armor, you know, and fantasy armor can be a little bit more organic looking, right? It can have imperfections, and it can have like it's wrought iron, and there's a little bit of wobbliness in there, and you can get away with that in ZBrush. But I still do some hard edge modeling from time to time, and I do take advantage of the polygroups increasing and high polish brush. But then I'll actually intentionally dent it and make it look a little more organic, and you can get away with that in a fantasy game. You know, other things like, you know, if you're doing like elf armor or something, it's really more exact, like orc armor and like bad guy armor. Super fun because you can just basically do like this sort of workflow where, and go back in time. So extraction off the forearm, and then inflated it, and then I use the trim dynamic to go ahead and just kind of trim off and make some angles, and then I used high polish, smoothed it out, and then I go ahead and I make a border with the mask, and then I'll just go ahead and pop, and then I'm using high polish, and I'm defining some planes. I actually, like at this phase right here, I extruded that and made a border, and then right here, I actually just pulled those out, I think with snake hook, and then there's the border that I made with an extraction. That's when I added it. I merged it in there. And then start adding imperfections and battle damage and stuff like that. Boom, 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 just random stuff. And that's one of the things, too, is like this is going to become text. We're going to paint this model. And a lot of things are going to be added there as well. Like, I might not like those scratches anymore. And even though they're baked in the AO map, I just might erase them and make something else, you know? So that's another thing, too, is to keep in mind is like even though this is being sculpted, it's not set in stone. Like once we get it to a low poly, like there might be other stuff that we want to do that deviates from the sculpt, and that's okay. Let's see, moving down, gloves. You can guess these gloves are just extractions off the hands, and then I went ahead and just dug in here and made little holes. Wraps. These wraps, masking, just made masks off of, here I'll show you, I'll go back in time. I actually use the mask lasso, and I made these just sort of swoopy movements, boom, 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 and then subtracted little triangles off of them. And then once I had that, I went ahead and inflated just the borders because they were masked off, because that's what extractions do. And then I cleaned it up, put some standard brush on the borders just to make them separate, and pop them out a little bit, and done. And because I knew, and it's actually mirrored, but because I knew that this side would have an armor piece, I really didn't care. I went ahead and just mirrored it over. And this is going to be underneath big shoulder pads anyway. Here's the other thing. So you guys are kind of getting the workflow. You know, extraction, boom, boom, boom. Then if you look on the back, like back is symmetry because who cares? It's just the back. But then I go ahead and throw that in there just to add some asymmetry. And then just another piece right here, just a filler piece because I didn't want you to see inside the neck hole. too much. And, oh yeah, and then spikes. I made these spikes, I think I made them off a cube. Let's see, is there any history on this? Maybe not. Once I combined it, it might be gone. Yeah, I just made one spike and then I placed them and did all that stuff. So that is basically, it's basically my workflow. And that's another thing too, like the sign, like for me, like the sign of a great video game and a great program, or just a great piece of software, is like, you can think to yourself, like, I wonder if I could do this, and then you can. You know what I mean? Like, there's been moments when I've been playing like Grand Theft Auto or something, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if I could like jump out of this airplane and hijack the other airplane, and I totally could, and I was like, oh. So, you know what I mean? Like, you want like, it's like ZBrush is the same way. I'm like, I wonder if I could do this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can. It allows you to experiment and to try fun stuff.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Josh Singh.